Hi, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning wherever you are. This is George Mtonga for georgeforzambia.com. Again, I'm here looking at a political issue in Zambia that I feel I can discuss. And today we wanted to talk about domestic violence and just gender-based violence in Zambia. And in Zambia, one of the things that you always want to look at is the culture. And for this is true for most African people. And the reason why I always try to focus on the culture is because everybody seems to be looking at Africa. So you have foreign cultures looking at Africa and discussing certain issues about Africa from their perspective. So in this case, it might be a Western perspective or a Eurocentric perspective. The same level of misunderstanding that occur when Europeans are engaged in an activity that Africans will never engage in. There is this just cultural disparity that I think only dialogue and explanation will ever get foreign people to understand why things happen a certain way in a specific country. Now, in Zambia, domestic violence, regardless of whether you're talking about Europeans or you're talking about foreign people, is just wrong, and it's wrong on a moral issue. As a moral issue, it's wrong as a political issue. But even a society that has the legal framework to protect women in that sense, why can we see that men are still justified to engage in domestic violence? Then it's no longer an issue of laws, because remember, Zambia has, I think, very progressive laws protecting women. It's just that even if the law is there, its enforcement is not there. And it has to deal with the fact that the people that have or are in charge of enforcing these laws generally have a very backward mind when it comes to domestic violence or gender-based violence. Now, my position is that I think we I've always felt that most of the problems in Africa or Zambia in this case always have to deal with the culture and education. The reason why I say education is this: if you are educating young people and you are raising them from the time that they are young, when you establish certain mentalities where you suggest that a young boy is supposed to be this, a young woman is supposed to be that, as they grow older, they internalize those perceptions about each other's roles in society. Now, what that does is that the role that men are encouraged to occupy often favors them being dominant and being controlling of women, and women are educated and trained to be these submissive creatures that only exist for the benefit of mankind. And you also have to also look at religion. We have a religion in the Judeo-Christian tradition. We have a religion that encourages women to be submissive. We have a religion that encourages men to be head of households and as a result become dominant and violent. What we fail to structure is a society in which, yes, men can be the head of households, they can take care of their wives and children, but that dominance, that violence is no longer associated with being the head of a household. And when it comes to being the head of household, men are trained to tap into the emotional qualities of being the head of a household, nurture activities that are less violent. And the reason why I feel it's crucial that we approach life in such a fashion is because domestic violence is psychologically and physically damaging for everybody involved. This is not just about the women involved, this is about the children, this is about the extended family, and this is about our society as an aggregate. So when we look at domestic violence, we need to really, really pinpoint and understand that it starts from the time that we are raising our children. We force both boys and girls to occupy roles that eventually perpetuate this level of interaction when they grow older. Because now we've continuously raised and taught the boy that this is what he's entitled to as a result of him being a man. But on the other hand, we've brought up our women to feel entitled to a certain trajectory of social occupation because they are women. I honestly don't see us getting anywhere with that. And it has to do with our culture and our traditions, which I don't have a problem with. But remember, the traditions that we have as a society in now in 2013 were not the same as the traditions that our forefathers had in the 1800s. Each and every culture, each and every tradition has evolved to incorporate the survival of that culture in the long run. So if, for example, HIV and AIDS, if we had a tradition of promiscuity where men and women engaged in sexual activities regardless of who it was, I don't think that's a tradition we would fight to keep because it would be an adverse reaction to our survival as a culture, because at this point we are faced with a situation and STDs that will prevent us from continuing to succeed as a people. And that's the way I look at these things. Here we have women, a group of people in a society that are tremendously beneficial if you tap into the right psyche, the right mindset for them. And women generally are more stable than men. What I always feel as an economist, and I always look at productivity. If we nurture women to occupy aggressive roles in society, we will find that we will increase our GDP, gross domestic product, because women will also be forced to come out of the house and engage and participate in the economy, and that also burdens the men less because now they don't have to feel compelled to continuously be the ones providing for their family. Now we create relationships that are equal. When we create relationships that are equal, both men and women treat each other with respect, they treat each other with love and care because they understand that they are in an equal relationship. They are in a relationship where one is not better than the other. Inevitably, that's going to force a healthier relationships. And I'm definitely for that because the household in Zambia is a container of success and development for the entire country. So my ideal encouragement would be that we train women, we train men, and we nurture a society that's going to allow men to respect women. That's the only way I see this issue of domestic violence going. I don't think men in our generation or my father's generation will ever get it that it's wrong to beat a woman. I don't feel that men will ever reach that level of enlightenment, as it were. But the younger ones should have that. Just like I don't have an understanding or perception of what it means to be under a colonial system. So my mind as a Zambian is very entitled as opposed to what my grandfather and my great grandfathers had because they were limited. However, for them to have fought for independence, they were fighting for a mindset. They wanted their children, their grandchildren to come and wake up and say that this is our country and this is what we can do and this is a better society for us. Now, same thing. I'm from a different generation than my father, which means that the way I view women is extremely different. My children will view women very differently. Why? Because we continuously have to force ourselves to continue developing, continue having better social interactions, because that's the only way we'll succeed as a society. These are Zambian women. These are our women. So I don't see why we should be engaged in domestic violence or abusive relationships. I really don't. So my position, as always, is that I'm against gender-based violence, I'm against domestic violence, and I just don't feel that there's any gain from it. But the only way we can solve it is through education, and education at an early age. Young boys need to understand that women are a certain way, and women also need to understand that men are a certain way, and each should be raised and brought up to see each the other side as an equal to them and not less than. No, we won't get anywhere for that. For all practical reasons, I don't think it will ever happen. I don't think it will ever work. And we we as a society, I think, need to work together to fix this. And I think that's pretty much what my position is on this issue. And I really hope that we start fixing these issues early on before it's too late. Thank you again for listening to my podcast. You can visit us at georgeforzambia.com for more discussions. If you have anything you want me to talk about,